Hello, my name's David Eames and welcome to the On Your Mind podcast. As always, I'm joined by Owen and Mikey, and our subject this week is dealing with change. Mikey, you suggested we deal with that, so why did you pick that one?
I suppose because it's quite on topic for myself at the minute. I'm going through lots of sort of transitional periods in my life, really going into business now and becoming a dad. I mean, I've been a dad for a while, but being a proper dad and taking, play in my life where I used to go out a lot, be with friends, be in the music scene, so it was forever moving and performing in lots of different places, to then coming to this acceptance that can't really do that anymore, in truth. And we've created this business here with the buses, and we've got kids coming and young kids, and it has been quite a hard acceptance to just go, I don't do the music thing anymore. So when we went to put on a recent festival where we'd usually have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds attending, because I wasn't quite necessarily involved in a certain scene and I was still acting and treating the festival in ways that I would before, we didn't have the same outcome, if that makes sense. So yeah, it was just growing to this acceptance of, this is where I'm at now, these are the lanes that I'm in, and make the most of that. So that was kind of where I wanted to go on this conversation for myself. Okay.
What do you have to say about that? I mean, do you
selfish,
have to deal with change?
It's quite selfish.
Yeah.
I want to talk about other stuff. We'll do what Mikey wants to do. But, I mean, it's one of them. I think change is a big thing for me that I often can reflect or look back on and see how different things are and how much things have changed. And obviously there's differences with it where you've got something coming that's different that you're not expecting or you weren't ready for. And there's other times when you can look back, and even if, like when I was at Egg, I had a circle of friends. We got married when I was at Egg, so all the people at the wedding were from Egg and all the rest of it. So like my life at that time, that I was happy and everything was good, it seemed normal. And then I look back now, and if I got married tomorrow, there'd be probably, 80% of the people that were at the wedding before wouldn't be at this one. But they were important to me at the time. Does that make sense? So I think sometimes to reflect and look back, and it almost justifies that change is okay, if that makes sense. Or that's how I justify it to myself.
Okay. I think that change needs to be okay because change is the only constant. You know that phrase I'm fond of quoting, that this too shall pass, is the truth. I think when we're kids, for some kids it's not the case, but for many it seems like things are constant, that parents are going to be around, maybe grandparents are going to be around, and then as time goes by you start to realise that things aren't going to stay the same.
Yeah.
And it sometimes feels like that change is accelerating, and certainly when you get to middle age and beyond, physical changes start to take place. Careers don't go the way you want. In fact, I love to quote the John Lennon's quote from the song Beautiful Boy, which is, life is what happens while you're busy making other plans.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah.
Because nothing ever goes to plan. Nothing ever goes to plan, not for long. And the future is utterly unpredictable. I think we live in a chaotic, random universe. And we like to have the idea that we're in control of things, but there's actually very little we're in control of.
Yeah. I think keeping me in a past version of myself and not going into that change is my idea of what people think about me, if that makes sense. So I've grown this character of a performer, out all the time, with different crowds, and the party guy, and then that version of me I want to sort of hold on to, because I'm like, what if they see me now in this new light? Will they still see me in the same light in a way? And that can become quite daunting, that you're going to have to either explain to these crowds and these people, this is just who I am now, this new self side of my nature, or find other crowds.
Okay, so you're not really talking about anxiety that change itself is generating for you. You're talking about how other people perceive you and how important that is to you, which is kind of a different issue.
That's interesting.
Because I was about to say the same thing.
Yeah.
Only because it seems like it's more you're concerned of people either accepting you or something else. And to me, and I don't know if it's from age, I've always been quite similar, but it's one of them. Like I said before, when my dad and your dad said to you, "Let them have your kid," if they don't like you, or if I change slightly and then all of a sudden they didn't like me, I would question if they liked me before or there was something in it for them. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I think the sooner you can get comfortable in your own skin, regardless of what you do, if you're going to be the big thing on the stage or you're just at home with the kids, as long as you're settled, content. Well, that's how I work. I need to be settled.
But the thing is that's much simpler to say than to achieve.
Of course, yeah.
Because that sort of sense of self is often formed in early childhood.
Yeah.
There's from a humanistic perspective, there's something called locus of evaluation. That's that point from where we see ourselves. So if we have an external locus of evaluation, then we need the world to tell us that we're okay. If it's internal, then we can look at ourselves and say, I'm okay. It's nice to be liked, but it's not essential.
Yeah.
And often those experiences in early childhood are going to affect that. That basis of self-esteem. It's also with attachment styles as well. But that basic sense of how we see ourselves in the world is down to whether a baby's been held a lot in the first 2 years of life in the non-verbal stage.
Yeah. And I think... Would you say it's probably a lot more difficult nowadays for kids? Because obviously when we were growing up, there was no internet, there was no social media, there was no judgment from multiple angles. Like, yeah, you had a friend group or your family group or whatever, but it was quite simple. So when I went to primary school, I had the majority of friends that then went to secondary school, maybe saw some of them at college, but it was more, I had a constant of like... low-level friends, mid-level friends, and best friends, and it wasn't like a Enid Blyton novel where we're going and playing in the brook and all the rest of it. But there was no other limitations or parameters around that. Like, it wasn't that someone said, "Oh well, I saw that you posted this on Facebook or you did this and that." It was just you were in the moment, and obviously, as difficult as we had childhood periods, it wasn't like it is now. You know, with the rate of suicide and people harming themselves and going within themselves. And I think a lot of that is down to the platform being changed. Like, growing up is different growing up now to what it was even 20 years, 30 years ago.
Perhaps that acts as an accelerant for what is already there, because it's that, so this thing about the self-esteem where it rests is formed in very early childhood. So I think it's independent of those modern influences. I think often children are doing better these days than previously, because quite a few of my clients that I work with, that they might have had difficult, typically British, distant childhoods, and have determined to do a different thing for their own children. And
okay,
you know, I don't think whether that resonates with you, Mikey. You know that if you're trying to make a warmer environment for your own kids than the ones that you had yourself.
Completely, I've really resonated to many things you said there, and especially even being held as a baby. I know that I had quite a traumatic birth. I had to sort of be in one of them incubators as a baby and stuff, and I was in hospital for weeks, I believe, dehydrated and so on. But ever since then, I think the validation thing sprung to mind there. My mum's always openly said, and this is just a known thing, she said, I never wanted kids. I only had kids for your dad. That was the point of it. So I think I've always tried to show people I am worth something, and that feeling of not being enough's always sprung to my mind. So I've lived quite consciously and unconsciously, as many of us have, travelled a road, built up a bit of a name or something there for myself, and then people suddenly start going, oh yeah, you're good at this, you're that, and you try, and then for myself I've clung on to that as hard as I could, and then when I'm feeling myself, actually, I'm more comfortable in this nature of my life and moving on here, I still want hold of this over here.
So, I guess what we're saying there, then, the difficulty of dealing with change is if those external perceptions shaping how we feel about ourselves, that if that situation changes, that's going to change how we feel about ourselves.
Yeah.
Whereas if we can be more independent of that, and almost independent of the effects of change, because we know who we are. again, it's much easier said than done for many people.
The road of self-discovery and sort of knowing who you are on a deeper level than just what you do. How do you help people sort of embark on that road?
Well, in therapy, delivering therapy, the key thing is the experience of being accepted unconditionally. I think there's things that we talk about, we explore things in the past, we try to get an understanding of things, intellectual understanding. But I think at the heart of change, it's the experience of relationships someone can rely on. The therapeutic relationship is like no other, because you're talking to someone who is only want to talk about your stuff. If they're talking about their stuff, it's only as a way of illustrating your own stuff.
Yeah.
And that idea of being able to say anything without being judged is unique.
Have you ever found it difficult? Has anyone ever said anything? I know obviously you can't talk about clients. Has anyone ever said something you thought, that's hardcore?
Well, yeah. But
the same rule applies. Just everything's good.
It makes me sound like a saint, because I'm saying I'm accepting people unconditionally. Owen will know I am no saint.
Well, yeah.
He knows.
It's a different podcast.
He probably knows me. He knows me almost as well as anyone. And I can objectify with the best of them. If I'm on the road, everybody's a knobhead. But when you really get to know someone, the privilege that I get in working with clients in therapy is people tell you who they really are. And you start to get an understanding of what's made them who they are. Everyone starts off as an innocent. There are no evil babies.
Yeah.
In fact, there are no evil people. There are people who do evil things sometimes. But everyone starts off almost as a blank slate.
Yeah.
And then things happen to people. And it changes the way they perceive themselves and the world. And if you mistreat people as children, they might grow up to want to mistreat others later. But to understand where it's come from makes it impossible to judge people.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a good rule for life in general. Right? If we're getting upset with someone or a situation, trying to understand it is a way of reducing that upset. If our wife or partner is having a tough day and chewing our ear off, rather than thinking that's not fair, thinking, what's going on for them at the moment?
Yeah. I have tried that. And because obviously it's a long-standing relationship, because she doesn't know that I'm doing that, I get more frustrated because I think I'm the bigger person here. I'm letting you off. You're having a tough day, but I kind of need you to know that I'm counteracting your tough day by, I need a medal, essentially. I need a medal or a badge because it can't be selfless. When you're in the midst of a real barn burner and someone's kicking off, and then you do get the voice of David going, dude, it's just not you. It could be something they're going through. So you think, okay. I'll quietly take this one. I'll take the knee. And then because they carry on, you think, hold on, I'm taking the knee. Leave me alone.
Yeah, but that's a man. A man always wants validation from his mum.
Yeah, there are levels to it.
So yeah, I've done the cleaning. Are you gonna? I've done that for you, love.
Yeah, it wasn't for us. It wasn't for the house. It was like, look, aren't I good?
Yeah. Give me a medal.
In any form of your life, it could be really big changes or small changes, maybe giving up smoking, giving up drink, giving up a thing that you've so used to doing, it's habitual and a routine. Do you feel often it is the case that it's good to root back, look over here of why you're doing such a thing, and that can help you on the path? Or sometimes could it be quite immediate actions in, I just don't do that anymore, and then finding coping mechanisms and ways of dealing with that?
I think it's about trying to accept ourselves. That back in the hippie past, people talked about learning to love yourself, which sounds a bit icky, but actually, if you think, I think I've probably said this before, the highest expressions of love are acceptance and forgiveness.
Yeah,
because that's kind of selfless in its way. And how about learning to direct that at yourself? So sometimes change is brought about because of mistakes that we've made, things that don't work out. And you can give yourself a real hard time for that. But you can't change what's happened. You can only change what you think about it. And that may change how you feel about it. So if you're giving yourself a kicking all the time for what's ostensibly gone wrong, then that's not going to help, because you learn from it. The most valuable lessons in life come from disaster.
Yeah.
I don't think good times teaches anything at all.
No, it's still working. Don't fix it.
Often, good times just teach us to be arrogant and complacent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Success is really difficult sometimes.
Yeah.
But failure can be a great teacher.
So, for me, with looking at my own journey, change. I mean, there was quite a drastic thing, because it wasn't that I was always looking for validation, but there was a time when I would try and not justify my existence, but if I was interacting with, let's say, a celebrity, and I think this is when it depends how you put them on a pedestal, whereabouts you put them, and is it just their status, or have you met this person and you can see them in real life? Because I've met some people that I wouldn't have classed as good at me at certain things, and I'm not as good as them at certain things, but they're things that make them better are putting them on the TV or whatever. But there was often a time when I would meet either fighters or people within the industry that I'd then try and justify why I was there. Oh, wow, I know such and such, and I've met this guy, and I did this for this person, I did that for that. And I got to the point, I was like, what the hell are you doing? Yeah. Like, stop it. Because it doesn't matter to them. Like, a quick example, when I went to Vegas, Dan took us backstage. It was amazing. I got to meet all, like, the Alan Shearers of UFC, like the Gary Linekers, like the proper top guys. So Joe Rogan was there. Obviously, Joe Rogan was doing the commentary, and he was doing the weigh-in. Massive guy, dead famous, super humble. And I went over, I said to Dan, I'm just going to go and say hi to Joe, I just want to say thanks, because obviously I've been watching this thing forever, and I just wanted to have a bit of a connection with him. And you could tell he has it all the time, not interested, and who the hell am I? Why should I be? Why should he meet me with open arms? And he sort of gave me the normal brush off, and I was like, cool, that's fine. I've done what I was going to want to do. I went over and I saw him. I didn't ask for a picture, because that's another level of that pedestal. I was like, do you know what? I'm not going to do that. 20 minutes later, while we were stood, and I was just stood with Dan talking, and Joe saw Dan and was like, oh, dude. And his character was 1,000,000% different. Came over, reintroduced himself to me. I was like, yeah, nice one. I had an impact. Okay. Yeah. And then we carried on talking, and it was lovely. And it was good, but I had to remind myself, like, I'm not important to him. It doesn't matter. I don't need to be. And it was difficult, because obviously I wanted to have this like, newfound friendship of all these people that are like, oh, you're that guy.
You and Rogan.
Exactly.
Living the high life.
But realistically, when I got home and I saw my youngest, who looks up to me still, it's like almost I'm her celebrity. And I was kind of not using all my energy on reinforcing that with libs. I was taking half of it and putting it on trying to impress Joe Rogan. And it's kind of wasted energy. Yeah. But it took a while for me to realise, what am I doing? Like, I need to reevaluate where I'm putting this attention, because this person already loves me unconditionally, already thinks I'm the man. We have a wicked time together. So it doesn't matter who the other person is. That making any sort of sense?
Yeah, it's success and failure are the same thing in many ways. There's a quote from the poem If by Kipling: if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, that's over the door at Wimbledon, and the players go out onto centre court.
Oh, really?
Oh. Yeah, because it is, that life goes on, and it's about trying to find out who you are in that. I think that's the essential of dealing with change.
Yeah,
to see that ourselves as never changing and always changing.
That's interesting.
Because we're never the same person. Neuroplasticity ensures our brains are always rewiring in response to our actions and the stimuli that we meet every day. And we're open systems. The cells of our body are always changing. We're like a fountain. We're always the same shape. We're always made up of different material.
Was that change with you quite dramatic after that? You had an experience and you thought, hang on a minute, what am I doing? And then live differently, or was it a gradual build?
I kind of found myself doing it over the years. And the first time when I was at school, there was a thing that my class did. And it was like this self-pity thing. They'd go up to someone and go, why'd you hate me? And and it just became a thing that then, oh no, man, and trying to build it, which it was strange, but it became normal. And when I went to college, there was a guy there called Sonny, and he'd travelled over from Hong Kong. He couldn't speak any English, and he was a mature student. And me and him clicked straight away. He was amazing, one of my closest friends at college. And like an idiot, I said to him one day, his English was getting a bit better, because obviously when he first came here, no English, and then he gradually got a bit better. And I said, "Why do you hate me?" And he just looked at me and was like, and he got really angry. He's like, "Don't you ever do that. That's not what you do. That's not how you act." And he sort of gave me a dressing down, and I was like, "Oh yeah, because that's fucking stupid." But it was just this. It doesn't necessarily mean it was the phrase or whatever it was. It was just the way that I was being a different character what he saw. So I think without being too like, "Oh, I'm terrible at this," and someone going, "No, you're really good." Like, the old classic on Facebook, "Oh, don't ask, babe." Do you know what I mean? It was so. It was the Rogan thing for me was. It was just a good indicator.
Yeah.
Because within the industry, within my little core group of the industry, I've already got people that I get on really well with, that respect me and I respect them. Like me and Dan, I mean, you look at Dan as one of the best analysts in the world. The most stuff that me and him talk about isn't fighting. Because I don't want him to work all the time. Same as that, we're not always counselling and doing whatever. I'm not doing graphic design for David. We've got other interests. And I think that's where, for me, the justification of this is a friendship, this is real. Do you know what I mean? When someone could ring you up and say, "I need you, dude," or whatever, then that's more important than, "Oh, yeah, well, Joe Rogan follows me back on Instagram."
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't mean that I don't like him. It doesn't mean I've got less respect for him. It was just this reminder in my brain to go, "Dude, what are you chasing?" And I wasn't actively chasing it, I don't think, but I did find myself overly justifying my position in that current circumstance.
Yeah. So why do people always want to get a selfie with celebrities these days? So they can show to their friends, "Hey, look at this famous person that I met."
Yeah.
Not necessarily to remember it for themselves, because you wouldn't forget yourself, would you?
No.
Yeah. It's like with what I find, when it's someone's birthday, I will ring them. I'll try and see them, or I'll ring them or text them directly. Whereas my sister, she does this thing where she puts 10 pictures of her and that person on a post. And it's like, we know you know them.
Yeah.
So it's, to me, obviously there's certain issues growing up and all the rest of it that I know why she does it, but it's kind of sad that you feel like you have to have that as a reason to promote yourself or even put yourself out there. Whereas realistically, it means more to me if someone rang me and went, "Happy birthday, dude," rather than like counting, 200 people this year said happy birthday to me. Oh yeah, because it's just box checking.
It comes back to sort of knowing your why behind a lot of things, because I think you can still then be conscious about that, get your picture, and know there was probably some element of showing off in it, but because you're conscious of that happening, you can still do it but not get too lost within it. And the same with me, like when I met Russell Brand of recent, and I got all silly and Mr. Russell.
Yeah.
And it was another element of it though, as well as being like, "Hey, I'm with Russ." I was thinking of the event we were putting on, and I really wanted him to either acknowledge it or share it on something, more traction, more people. And I think within that, there's also a bit of purity. There's a bit of something good to come along with it. Of like, he could put this out, more people could attend. I think you can go into things with a bit of an unnatural thing, but there's goodness and light can come from it.
Yeah, the thing is, the celebrities, the situation you mentioned there, they're always meeting people who are thinking they want something from them.
Yeah,
exactly.
And it comes across quite strongly, and a lot of people aren't very conscious of that happening in front of them.
Yeah, but we're kind of getting off topic a bit here, I guess, which is not a bad thing.
No.
We want to wander about a bit. But what do you think about that idea that change is a constant? Change is a constant. We're always changing, but we're always same. I'm seeing your life as a thread running through, as a narrative arc.
I think that if I lived on my own purely, and this is just a truth, I'd be really comfortable in most things, in anything that presents itself to me. But as masculine energy and sort of that provider for the family, when I'm faced with the consequence of change that could potentially be damaging to finances or to their stability and my health, and I've got that sort of burden or weight, responsibility, something on my shoulder, that's where it can be very painful, difficult to deal with. So I accept everything's changing, and you've got to just face it and accept it and do the best within the parameter of it. But that's where it becomes a bit tighter and harder to manage at times for me.
Yeah, there are difficult feelings. I know them myself sometimes. When times get tough financially, and perhaps even more programmed with the age that I grew up in, of the man being the breadwinner, the provider, which is kind of a ridiculous idea. But there's shame attached to that sometimes if that's not working out. There's just the general pressure of where's the next meal coming from, or the definition of middle class poverty of not knowing where the next gin and tonic's coming from. But
there's levels, isn't there?
Yeah, because no matter what the level someone's income is, they tend to use it all.
Yes, they live to their means.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for me, like you were just saying about, obviously, if you were on your own, you'd be all right. And it's difficult, I think, sometimes for that to be seen through, because the bits that Chrissy does for you or you do for Chrissy, then all of a sudden, then you've got to remember that. But it's the biggest thing for me is not comparing too much, not trying to compare myself to someone at my age. Like if I was growing up with you and we're both the same age, and you then managed to land this job or bought this car or did this or did that, because there's so many parameters that you don't always see behind closed doors. You don't always know exactly what's going on for someone else. And as long as if you can focus, or I find if I can focus on myself, or even work with Stace, because I mean she's my rock. I'll be obviously dead or in prison. So whenever I've got that, it's always easier to focus on what we can do, or I find it easier to focus on what I can do. And I'm not saying it's perfect, but the minute I start looking at other people and trying to keep up with the Joneses or the other bits, that's when it starts twisting a bit faster. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think we're maybe getting something important here as well, is that where change, and I guess we're talking here about negative change, perceived to be negative change. When it gets really dangerous is when we're thinking that we can get by on our own.
Yeah.
And maybe we're keeping that stress of that away from those who we care about. And that ends up with someone sometimes taking their own life.
Yeah.
Very often that when people get into that state of mind, it's that, well, the world would be better off without me.
Yeah, which is terrifying.
Or that's the only thing I've got any control over.
Yeah.
And that's because somebody's just not talking to anyone else around them about, hey, I'm finding it tough at the moment. Because change can be really tough.
Yeah.
So it's about trying to see through to the other side of it, that maybe that change is going to be hard.
Yeah.
But maybe we're going to learn something from it. So there's that saying from Nietzsche, that whatever doesn't destroy me can only make me stronger. It's often misquoted as whatever doesn't kill me. Well, you can be destroyed by more ways than dying.
Yeah.
People can be destroyed mentally by what happens to them, for sure. But if you're able to keep it together, then it will make you stronger. At the very least, by learning that you've got through it, that you can survive tough times, that you're not broken by it.
Would you say it's as important for the listener then? Because obviously I know your long-term, long-standing relationship, similar to mine and yours. Obviously, it's easy to sometimes snap at someone or to get cross. And obviously, if Stace came to me now and was like, I've got to tell you something, it's been on my mind, I've got 10 grand's worth of credit card debt. How important is it? Because obviously I don't know what she's been through, how many months she's been thinking about saying this, how she's wanting to raise it. And initially to me, that would be terrifying. And for fuck's sake, what am I going to do now? Whereas, how important is it for the listener to then try not, because they've done what they couldn't do. They've said something. They've expressed, or they've tried to share. Is it more important, or is it as equally as important to be able to be the shoulder, or to let them get it all out, so that then you can work a plan?
Yeah, but again, we might be failing in that initially.
That's what I mean. So the
initial reaction is, what the Donald Duck's gone here.
Yeah. And
then, but it's that, can you pull back from that and then calm down and think, okay, how are we going to deal with this?
Yeah. I suppose you've got to be allowed to react.
Yeah. If it's completely T-bone you coming in from the side like that, then you're probably not going to go, oh, well, okay, that sounds really tough. How are we going to work this out together?
Yeah.
You're gonna react probably quite strongly.
Yeah.
But then, do you return, and how do you deal with it together? The key is recognizing that you've been told.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a big takeaway.
Yeah,
it's a big takeaway because
maybe that can help us to talk to other people about our issues. You think about, someone that you love. If they're in trouble, would you want them to tell you?
Without a doubt.
Without question. So reverse that.
Yeah. And what's the other option? I mean, I know when we were growing up, one of my neighbours took his own life, and outside looking in, it was gold. Everything was good, and ultimately, it was all financial. And it's so hard now, being the age I am, to look back and know that I've already outlived what he got to, and I thought he was an older dude. But to think it can't have been that hard. And I know I'm not like trivialising it at all, but it just breaks my heart that someone couldn't let it go. It couldn't reach out, couldn't talk to someone, and that must be a really lonely, really sad, difficult thing to go through. And it's really sad that it's essentially talking.
Yeah.
If you can.
Yeah. And there is somewhere on the other side. A very tough time in my life 30 years ago was I've been diagnosed with a potentially terminal illness, and my business went down, and we ended up losing our house. And with a day to go, we'd got nowhere to live.
Wow.
By selling some stuff, we got the deposit on a really crappy, what was effectively a slum house. And we got a van hired to take our stuff on the day, and on the day we're taking the stuff that we couldn't fit all the stuff in the van and my car, and the people had come to repossess our house, and I left my wife sitting in the rain with the balance of our stuff while I went to get the stuff for the new house, and then came back to pick her with the rest of it. That was a hard day.
Yeah.
That was a really hard day.
But you survived that.
But it was one of the best things that ever happened.
Yeah, what were some of the lessons that you came away with, reflecting back? Not least, you survive.
Yeah.
That you can get through the toughest times and survive. Learning what's really important in life. And just having the two of us, that was the most important thing. And our dog at the time, Duke, he wasn't bothered, didn't contribute at all.
No, of course, he still wanted feeding.
Yeah. But yeah, it's almost difficult to say what you do learn from it, but not least that in a way these material things, they're not that important.
Yeah.
It's life and love.
Yeah.
That's what really matters.
Wow. That's a
solid
good way to take a podcast. End on, and it's life and love. That was stunning.
Yeah, I think that maybe is a good point to end this. So I hope we've covered something about change today. It's been a bit of a ramble, but in the end, I guess what we're saying is change is a constant. So try to learn to live with it and love the people that you're with. Thanks very much. See you next time.
Take it easy, dude.
Beauty.